Hello and welcome to the brewery. And well, it's the end of a brew day at the moment. I'll be making a Marzen, but that's not particularly important to this video. What we're going to have a look at this video, and this is my first attempt at this, is counting yeast cells. I bought a microscope off second hand off a bloke somewhere a few years back. It must be maybe a year ago. He'd been using it to test his pet fish for diseases, which apparently is something you need to do. I got the hemocytometer online and have been having a little bit of a play with it, but haven't really had a good go. And for this video, I was really wondering how I was going to get you any pictures of the cells, but I found a cheap thing that attaches my phone onto the microscope, which was quite useful, and I managed to get some quite nice pictures, so hopefully this will be interesting. So to start with, I think I probably need to talk a little bit about the microscope and the hemocytometer. The microscope needs to have a magnification of about 400 times. This can go way higher, but I don't really need to use it. And for that, you then put the hemocytometer on the microscope tray, and well, to start with, we'll have a quick look at what it looks like. So a hemocytometer is set up for counting cells of lots of different sizes. So there are a number of grids on this of different sizes of cells, of little squares. As you can see, the one I'm using is the one with the double borders around it. Now there's a grid of these cells with the double borders around them, and we're going to count cells in the corners and the middle. If there's a good distribution of cells, you don't need to count them all. The little extra guidelines are there just to make it a bit easier to count. So since I'm brewing a lager, I'm using quite a lot of yeast, so I'm using 2 packets of Saf Lager 3470 in this Marzen. So that's what we're going with. So the first thing I've been doing is rehydrating the yeast. So to rehydrate the yeast, I've been aiming for about 20 millilitres per gram of yeast. So this worked out for 2 packets at about 230 ml of water. One of the things with doing cell counting is you have to be quite careful about volumes, because the calculations mean you actually have to know the volume. So I rehydrated the yeast. After it had finished rehydrating, I then took off a couple of samples, so 2 millimeters into 2 different glasses, just to give myself a backup in case I did something wrong. With the first set of 2 milliliters, I diluted it 30 times. I started off by diluting it 10 times. As you can see in this picture, there were far too many cells to count accurately. So I diluted it another 3 times to make it up to 30 times in total. And then we get a cell looking like this. After diluting, I added a drop of methylene blue dye. This is supposed to show you which cells are viable and which cells aren't. Okay, now we've had a look at the hemocytometer with some cells on it. This is where I started to count, and obviously I'm going to do that optically rather than through a photo, so back in a second. I'm not entirely sure that dyeing the cells worked properly. Maybe I didn't leave it long enough or something. As I seem to have about 50% blue cells and 50% non-blue cells, which seems a bit wrong. Either I've got the very non-viable yeast or something's gone wrong here. So I ended up with 115 non-blue cells and 116 blue cells in the 5 cells I've counted. So we need to start doing some maths. We multiply that up at start with by 5 to go for all the cells in the grid, and then we need to multiply it up for the dilution rate, so by 30, and by the size of the cell relative to the sample. So I'll go and do that maths, and then I will show you the numbers. Okay, so after all the maths is done, that worked out at about 4.5–5 million cells per milliliter in the wort, which feels a bit low. 6 million would be normal for beer, maybe half that again for lager, but I suspect the problem here is my technique and counting. I expect my measurements are off, I've got the wrong amount somewhere, or I've got something wrong with the hemocytometer, which I bought a long time ago. And probably don't have the accurate details for. So even though I didn't get a very accurate number out, I don't think, I hope that was interesting, and I will see you in another video.